people get back to work. Quite a daunting proposition, I would say. So Gartner has been offering quite a lot of advice based on varied analysis. And they say the three broad trends according to them. So I've classified them as what are those trends which are accelerating today in the aftermath of COVID. We'll also hear about what is therefore the new impact. And I'll also take you through a couple of pendulum swings that we call it from an industry eye. Let's look at, what are those accelerating trends. Now, we've all been hearing, the analysis says 48% of people have very, clearly indicated that they are happy working from home. Now, 74% of CFOs have actually explained their desire to enable remote work post the outbreak, which means these are numbers which are all fallouts of survey, which means we need to actually take stock of the situation, gear ourselves up for a market which will enable most workforce to be working from home, which takes us on to the next element, which is about the skills that you need. So to succeed in this world of increased remote work, as hiring managers, most of us would want to prioritize certain set of skills. So what are those two big skills we're talking about? Digital dexterity and digital collaboration. Now, these obviously, we have all seen how the world works. We have all gone the digi way. While people have all been grooming themselves to be future ready, people have been grooming themselves to be digi ready. What is extremely interesting to see is, like never before today, digital has been embraced by every home. I'm sure India has never seen this kind of a radical shift in the way we have done our office. Offices have all shifted home. Very thin line between office and personal lives today. Obviously, this calls to a different set of performance management systems. HR is working all over to see how do we ensure those goals are reset? How do we ensure employees are evaluated differently in the current situation? So that goes on to say that the trend here is accelerating gig workers and gig employment. What do we mean by that? Until about 4 years ago, we have heard a lot about gig workers in a number of conferences that we would have all visited. But here we see it unfolding right in front of our eyes. So as we talk about gig workers, we're talking about how we could bring in more flexibility and cost savings from an organization perspective. Because gig workers, I'm sure many of us understand who the gig workers are. The gig economy is here to stay. These are people who are more than happy to take on part-time assignments, freelance, and we'll see what the impact is. The impact, therefore, of the remote work is very clearly a separation of the role versus the skill. Therefore, this shift is moving on, or the shift is happening from a specific job role which people used to aspire in the past. Today, we are talking about the contingent workers coming into the workforce and leaders redefining what criticality itself means, which means employees in critical strategic roles or critical skills today would definitely hold center stage. So when you move this focus to coaching the employees to develop multifarious skills, we're actually potentially opening multiple avenues rather than just focus on a specific next role. So when we talk about organizations today redefining these, we are also required to look at the humanization of employees or the workforce. So throughout the COVID pandemic, many employees have formed more connected relationships, and we can't disagree there. Until now, we've only had social face-to-face interactions at work, but today much of it is moved remote, and therefore it's becoming increasingly task-oriented. So understanding how to engage with these remote workers, given the organization's culture, is extremely important. Therefore, a culture of inclusiveness is what the HR philosophy needs to embrace. So, and I can talk to you very proudly about the organization I work for, so Steria. So here as a culture, we have ensured right from day one, when we moved on, right from day two, when we moved into remote working, the emphasis has been completely on engaging, communicating, and more engagement. So that is exactly what is required to deliver your employee experience. Because, many of us know that we connect more as people to people first, right? Hierarchies do not stand in front of social partnerships and relationships. So it's extremely important for people on this call who belong to the HR fraternity to understand that unless you engage and treat your workforce very well at these times, you really can't expect, considerable degree of employee loyalty when we all get back to work. So having said this, what are those swings that we are going to be seeing? We talked about pendulum swings, which means the emergence of the top tier employers and labor market beginning to return to normalcy. You'll see how the shift is again happening from designing for efficiency to designing for resilience. For those of you who have been following very closely, different webinars or conferences, you realize that resilience, which I will delve on in more detail subsequently, resilience is the key. Therefore, organizations would like to prioritize resilience as equally important, if not more, than efficiency. Having said that, it actually calls for a great degree of flexibility and adaptability. The need of the hour, folks, is if we want to thrive, let alone survive, people need to understand how we work along in a situation which requires enhanced flexibility. And therefore, the thrust is on employees gathering cross-functional knowledge and training. So the entire focus or the impetus on training, which is all virtual. Today you have Harvard University, you have Stanford University giving away free training and free learning programs. Absolutely amazing and unheard of until today. So, even my own organization, we have had a complete slew of training initiatives and programs catering to different segments, different disciplines, different interest areas. The emphasis is completely on an individual trying to upskill himself or herself. Why do we do that? Because today we have to move away from trying to predict, which is where we were about a couple of months ago when we began 2020. We were all talking about predicting 2020. Today we are looking at a society which is working hard, trying to respond to the situation. Responding to stakeholders would definitely imply your clientele, right? The clients we work with, responding to people whom we collaborate with. So these are extremely important when we say resilience. I will take you through to resilience in a couple of minutes from now. So when we say this, organizations' complexity has definitely increased across the next couple of months. There's bound to be more of mergers and acquisitions. There will be an acceleration and nationalization of organizations. Companies would become even bigger. So this rise in complexity is bound to call for more agility. This will create challenges for leaders because newer operating models, people who are on the call who've been hearing about agile methods of working would definitely relate to what I'm saying. Enhanced complexity calls for more agile, more nimble-footed operating models, because only then the differentiation of people at the workplace can happen. So when we talk about all of this, what do we mean by a new world of work? We need to first understand the world of work before we think about how do we adapt to it, right? So here are, and I would like to begin on this note by saying it's not as dismal as it appears. Many people have been talking about the pandemic, giving it a larger proportion than it possibly assumes. The fact remains that, when we had 9/11 or when we had way back the Black Swan effects, right? The Lebanese author Nicholas speaks about the Black Swan effect. And these are impacts which have resulted in taking consequences. So whether it was the Spanish flu about 102 years back, or in 1980 when we had the Twin Towers, the Lehman Brothers crash in 2008, all of these, the Twin Towers crash again. So business goes on, life goes on, nothing stops. What will actually help us adapt to this change is the way we prepare ourselves and the way we gear up for this changing ecology around us. Having said that, we're talking about these few things which would be, the new world of work paradigms, which means as we all work towards creating those safe zone as a workplace for our people to get back to work whenever we are all out of the lockdown, we also want to, re-emphasize that health of employees is taken absolute priority. Most organizations, which include mine, where the senior management on a daily basis want to have a health check of all the employees, taking a dipstick to ensure people are fine, hale, healthy. We have moodometers which capture, how people feel as they step into and log into their office network. So those just go on to reiterate that health of the employee is absolutely the high priority in today's environment, which also means that we need to reassess how we're doing our work today. Until today, work was only done within the precincts of an office space. Physical face-to-face interactions, be it a meeting room, all of those mattered so much. But today, I'm sure many of you will agree with me that a lot more productivity has been achieved with people learning how to work from remote locations, with people learning how to do social collaboration from across the globe, which means a hybrid model is here to stay. The new world of work talks about the hybrid model, which means there will be some part of the workforce which will still be required to come back and do a face-to-face. There will also be some part of people who will be working virtual and remote. This is the new culture that we're talking about, because this is what is going to ensure we thrive in the day after tomorrow. We'll quickly move on to a couple of industry trends. This is more generic to varied industries, and we've taken this from Naukri. So when we had, a couple of, I don't know how many of you have seen interviews that have been, given by Mr. Pawan from Naukri. So Pawan speaks about Pawan Goel, the CEO of Naukri. He says the disruption caused by the COVID pandemic continues to impact hiring activity, and a 62% decline. This is statistics taken in April, the mid of April 2020, right? So very clearly you see some of the industries which have actually slowed down on hiring. Look at industry-wise analysis. The hotel industry, restaurants, travel, airlines have taken a significant beating and badly impacted. While IT organizations, pharmaceuticals, clinical research, insurance have been lesser impacted, I would put it that way. Obviously, if we have to help people, look up, you need to understand how do you upskill yourself, how do you quickly learn, whether it's domain expertise or technical skills, people need to upskill. That is the need of the hour. So there's a complete guide also available on how do you look at career progressions. So people who want to really look up career progressions by upskilling themselves can also look up some of those inputs that you'll see across, the internet. So industry-wise, as I said, besides the degrowth that you see in some, there's definitely going to be a look up in some of the industries. Pharmaceutical, for example, that we talked about, clinical research, IT, of course, software services, and insurance, which would be a little lesser impacted, right? Functional analysts would obviously rise high. There'll be a springing growth in functional roles. So whether it's going to be supply chain or whether it's going to be marketing, advertising, sales, business development, you will see some of these functional roles go up. So it's not all that dismal is what I'm trying to say. Where are the jobs then? So I classify them as three broad categories: the job creators, slackers, and hot roles. So talking of job creators, yes, we just spoke about this. We have had pharmaceutical, healthcare, digi, and retail, because we've all been watching the markets and we've all been hearing the news. So retail, of course, is springing and going back, bouncing back much faster than any other industries. On slackers, yes, automobile, banking, financial services, travel and tourism are impacted majorly. And it's going to be a while before we can see job market opening up in these areas. So a couple of hot roles that I've put are more from an IT perspective. So if you look up, these are areas where there's going to be an absolute, look up in hiring: data scientists, machine learning experts, and we talked about domain experts. So what then is this turnaround trying to say to us? Online education. We talked about online education. Online education, virtual learning, these are definitely there to stay unless we all incorporate learning as a daily activity. I'm sure people are not going to be standing the test of time post-COVID. Because new job roles, they actually are expanded. Most of the job roles can now be done remote. We talked about the gig workers. So there's an expansion, there's a very clear rise of the gig economy. And I'm sure many organizations have already started hiring people on a gig mode. Because you see, there are people who are absolutely flexible and ready with the skills that companies would take long days to train on. Therefore, organizations and clients with whom we work and associate with would be moving now, as opposed to permanent, they would all be looking at short-term work contracts, because obviously pricing is under the lens. So people are all particular about spending their money wisely and prudently, which means short-term work contracts and freelance is probably going to be the order of the day. Consequently, your reward systems from the HR fold would also, be in tune with the kind of people you're going to be getting to work. So this is going to be the turnaround post-COVID. And I would also like to take you through what we mean as lessons from the crisis. Before we go in there, I just like to ask all of your question. Ankita has been willing to help me out. I would just like to know how many of you have lost your jobs in the post-COVID scenario. We'll give you about 30 seconds to put in your answers, and I will bank on Ankita to collate that for you. How many of you have lost your jobs? It could either be a yes or a no. Kindly put your answers in the comment box. All right. So how many responses do we have, Ankita?
So a couple of them, Sarita, most of them have not, but people have seen a lot of friends and colleagues in the industry who are losing their jobs. So,
okay.
Yeah, the overall seems like, even if it's not reached them, but you can see the tension in the industry.
Right. Okay. So while I do understand that, the anxiety that has been building up is definitely not going to go away, because there is a tendency to view any job search solely as a means to an end, or even look at any job solely as a means to an end. However, things aren't as dismal as they might seem. If only people were willing to retrain themselves, if only people were willing to learn, this is a time to look within. This is the time for us to introspect and see, how do I gear up for that new job role of tomorrow, right? So on that note, resilience is not just a catchphrase. It is an absolute necessity to survive and thrive. We've been listening to a lot being said about how things are all being working now on the digi mode. Everything's done sitting at your desk at home. So obviously, if we do not know how to, be in tune with the digi world, we really wouldn't be able to work along with people. Organizations would want to pick up people who are totally digi ready, who are absolutely nimble footed in learning digital technologies, and quite clear about working in a new environment post COVID. So when we talk about getting relevant, it's also important to stay competitive. And the need of the hour today is to innovate. So what got us here will possibly not get us to the next environment, because what got us here was dependent on a very different environment and a very different world where we thrived in. Today, there are international partnerships which are all available free, with higher education coming to our doorstep from prominent universities that we just heard a few minutes back. Therefore, even while we are remotely connected, we are remotely connected even when we are socially disconnected. Yes, there's social distancing, which is going to be there for the next couple of months till the situation around us calms down. But that doesn't mean that we can't be connected remotely with our peer groups across organizations, learn from what they're doing, because I'm given to understand there are quite a few here in this forum who are possibly looking for jobs as well. So definitely the alumni network plays a very, very important role in trying to support us to get jobs. So what does the new world look like, right? It's a forced transformation. When people talk about getting into gig economy, there are many organizations which felt, oh no, you know what, we have breach of security is a big problem. We wouldn't want to employ contract and temporary workforce. We have service level agreements, we have non-disclosure agreements, so on and so forth. Nobody expected that in less than 48 hours, business transformation has happened as a result of everything moving remote, right? So I quite like Bernard Williams. He says, man has never made any material as resilient as the human spirit. So let's gear up, because we just can't afford to, feel very dismal about things around us. Definitely when we get back to work, or when we all look at the world around us in a couple of weeks from now, it's not going to be the same world that we left before mid of March or, early April. So what we're talking about here is resilience, right? If you see, it's pretty much the ability to bounce back, when you have every reason to shut down, but then you fight on. So this is the dictionary definition of resilience. Yes, tweak a little bit to make us all feel happy about it. So pretty much like a battery, yeah, there is the positive and the negative. Resilient people have both the tapped as well as the untapped reserves. And that untapped reserve is where we need to tap today so that we understand how to overcome our setbacks. They're all temporary in nature. The fears of daily life will continue to exist. We really can't do away from the fears. We need to be honest to ourselves and face those fears. But then we also need to know that the power to shift and move from there and come out of it is within us, right? As Buddhi says, the human capacity for burden is like a bamboo, far more flexible than you would ever believe at first glance. So these are the negatives that I'm sure, many of people are going at this point in time because they're all confined indoors. Some of them have been, shown the door, lost their jobs. Okay, so you can see some of those emotions of anger, depression, frustration. When we speak to people, I think it's extremely important to keep connecting with people, speaking to them, making them understand that this is beyond it. So let's look at what it means I categorize them as for job seekers and for people who are already working, right? So for job seekers, we're talking about very simple strategies that are brought in for you to build resilience as part of your job search. So we first start with being active in your job. Okay, success in any job or in life comes from the ability to pick ourselves up and move quickly beyond disappointments. And this is something I'm speaking from personal life, right? Then there are very, very simple strategies. How about looking them up, right? If you're an active participant in a job search, it absolutely helps you build confidence. It lets you to take charge and at least some degree of control in an externally controlled environment. So network and absolutely connect with people. Just sitting behind a laptop or a computer and getting into an analysis doesn't help. The more you network, the more you understand what the industry wants. And you need to network with industry insiders, which means possibly your seniors, your alumni from your colleges, because the greater your knowledge, the easier it is to get your job openings. So feeling in charge of your career builds resilience. Therefore, please understand it's not you. Even if you went through and you did not get through, there's a rejection, which is bound to happen because as a job seeker, there are moments and times where you may possibly not get through an opening. If you do not get through, that's fine, right? It's just that sometimes talented people also don't get hired. You will need to introspect to see what then you need to do for the next employment rather than fret and fume over things. So don't take things personally because very little is directly attributable to your education, your skills, or your experience. A lot of it is attributed to external factors as well. There could be varied reasons when somebody doesn't get through. The realization is frustrating, but then as no one likes not to be in control, people need to understand that if you do not take control of yourself, then you probably stand bleaker chances in the next interview. Then again, the attention is more, the devil is in the details, as they say. So the retail is in the detail, it says, which means, there is an example which I often, remember and I talk about. Here was this candidate who was selected or rather asked to come in for a hiring process. And when the interviews were on, he had his vice president sit up with him and look up a couple of candidates who were seemingly exceptional and they had to make a choice. So when the job competitions are tight, very small nuances can actually make or break a candidate winning or losing the selection process. So when the interviewer shook hands, with the interviewee, there were 4 interviewers in this panel, and the successful candidate quickly looked up the name tags of each one of them when the interview was on. And what did he do? He shook hands and he addressed all of them by their name individually and thanked them. Now, that is the sort of detail sometimes which can possibly make a swing in the selection process. So when the email was sent, to the person who interviewed him, the interview panel, the candidate writes and says, can you pass on our thanks, my thanks to the other 3 interviewers as well? Now, obviously, this detailing from the candidate had a significant impact on the panel. Just recognizing that somebody made the extra effort to understand who else were there, the attention to detail, right? That can actually help people in the interview process, if they were supposed to overcome any other minor flaws, also sort of get overruled when we have these kind of detailing which panels normally look for. So finer details are important. Likewise, solicit feedback. If people get rejected, it can happen. Yes, it's a daunting proposition. One needs to swallow the pride and then look up to see whether we take a negative path or a positive terminal in the battery. And it's important to seek feedback, because that information and input is going to be helping you to embrace your failure. And when people learn to embrace failures, it becomes a very constructive turn in life. Because rebounding from setback is not by any means an easy task. Therefore, it brings me to what I want to say. Resilience is a skill, and that needs to be developed and strengthened consciously over time. So on that note, we will move on to the next. Nelson Mandela's quote comes to mind: the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So I'll take you through what do we do then. Flipping the switch is a skill which people need to learn. What do we mean by flipping the switch? So here we're talking about the first phase, which is denial. So invariably, people tend to deny. If there is a problem, if there's a rejection, I did everything very well. It's not me, it's somebody else. That doesn't help. So flipping the switch is very important, because we need to first accept and acknowledge that there is a problem. So when people understand that there is a problem, they know what to do about it. Do the opposite of what normally people would do in a similar situation. So rather than sit and feel morose and, broken down, heartbroken completely about why and what force, it's important to sit back and think and say, what should I do if I had a similar interview again? What could I have done better? Think logically, put your pen to paper, ask yourself, what are those 3 things which you did not do possibly very well, where you felt diffident? Why did you feel diffident? So that is how you look about, flipping a switch means very clearly trying to do something which you would normally not do. Don't get onto a blame game. Don't blame yourself. The easiest thing to do in life is to blame ourselves and go hard and harder on ourselves. That doesn't help. So therefore, it's important to be cognizant of how we feel. Very, very important to recognize, because if we do not recognize how we feel, nobody else will. It's important to flip the switch and start looking at things from a different lens and a different perspective. So that brings me more or less to the end as I move forward. Yes, I believe us when we were all children, we used to sing, we shall overcome someday. And that's a belief which we will need to march on. This is a book which has influenced me, a couple of years back. I read this book. It's a phenomenal read. It's The Resilience Breakthrough. And I'm sure, people who if you have not read this book, you definitely read it, because the Resilience Breakthrough is all about how do you handle disappointments in life? How do you know how to, draw strength from yourself and environment around you? And how do you create your own strength and the resilience that's required to face the harder times? So on that note, I know, it's 4:40. I was given 40 minutes to speak. I'm done with the presentation. Then I'll be very happy to have any interactions with all of you. It's a smaller team. Extremely happy to take any questions. As I said, Ankita would be taking us through. Ankita, if you could.
Thank you so much, Sabita, for this very insightful webinar. I already have a few questions. Should I just read it out to you? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you. Please go.
Okay, so this question is about what is the hiring plan of Sopra in coming future, as they have already stopped the hiring from mid-March. And Sopra Steria performed very well in the first quarter of 2020, but what is the plan of hiring majorly into BPS part? That's one question which has come.
Could you release the last part of the question? What is your hiring plan for?
Hiring plan for 2020, like, because they have I believe you guys have stopped hiring from March 2020. So what is the plan?
Right. I would, while the
Majorly
question
into
is more.
BPO.
Okay. Am I audible? Can you hear me now, Ankita?
Yeah, I can hear you.
First of all, I would like to clarify and say that we have not stopped hiring. Like every other organization, we all would definitely need to adopt a wait and watch policy. At the same time, hiring for key skills, hiring for vital, roles that we need in the organization from a client perspective, continue as is. We haven't stopped hiring completely. Obviously, it would take a little of a setback because one needs to wait. We are all dependent on our clientele whom we work with. We will need to wait and see how things pan out for them in this post-COVID scenario when all of us bounce back to work after this initial shock is done. So I think that is important because we need to play a little cautious, and that's exactly what, like many organizations, we also are doing today. But that doesn't mean we have stopped hiring anyway, because our talent acquisition team continues to look at staffing, of course, more guardedly, more cautiously, where relevant and where required.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. The next question is from Tanvi. She's asking, as we keep hearing bad news on losing jobs every day, what do you suggest we should do to manage our jobs?
Right. So we talked about being relevant. We talked about learning certain skills very quickly in the wake of the consultation. Because if everybody knew the same set of things, then it is common vanilla. There'll always need to be
Right.
that edge that we need to create for ourselves. So as we said, if the edge has to come only when somebody looks at upskilling. There
Right.
is any upskilling, then there's no differentiation. Today is a time when, like every kind of a job market, every organization will be looking at a differentiation in the workforce. So it's important to keep honing our skills. Going back to Stephen Covey, sharpen the saw.
Right. Uh, I don't think we have any more questions, Sarita. So, yeah, I think
Let's give a couple
thank
of
you so much. Sure, sure. If you want, we can do that. If you have any insights, if you want to share a story or anything, we are more than happy to hear that as well. Not a problem. So, Sabita, from
Of course,
marketing
for those
point of
people
view,
on the bridge, unfortunately, I do not have your work profile with me. I mean, I don't quite know which industry or experience profile you come from. But, we have people here who are responsible for people, as in, leadership, whether they are into the HR fraternity or the technological streams. It's extremely important. The need of the hour is not to look at anything new from a transformation perspective, but to stay connected with your teams, however remote they may be, to just give them the feeling that yes, we are there for them. And I think that is something which I am absolutely amazed at the way my organization has gone ahead, right from the CEO to the COO to the CHRO. It's only been the mantra has been connect, connect, and more connect. And I'm very happy to share with you that my entire talent team, the talent management workforce, have been spending the last 1 month and a half in connecting to people, having one-on-one conversations, assuaging fears of people wherever we find people are definitely, feeling insecure or uncertain about the future. That individual connect has been something, remarkable in my organization. And I think I'm very proud to share that with you all, because today when I get my teams back to work, other than not going to forget the fact that right from the senior teams, everybody has made an effort to stay connected with them. And that is very important. So, that's a big takeaway personally for me, to understand how human behaviors work when they stay in isolation, because man is a social animal. And, all the more in the Indian context, we look at people, when we see people, we feel, we speak, share, and we feel much better. So loneliness, isolation is
right.
one of the huge challenges that, remote working can pose. So it's important for people to connect. In the words of Indranvi, she says, whatever anybody says or does, you need to assume positive intent. For people on the other side, you need to understand that sometimes people who speaking to you from across the miles could possibly have your best interest in heart. So don't assume anything negative. Don't get angry. You need to ponder, take a couple of minutes, think, and then you'll be amazed to see your positivity take over. So stay positive. The other thing is, when people, it's very important, treat your peers, treat your subordinates as absolutely very, very good fellow humans, because goodness will
Mhm.
ultimately prevail. Today is not a time when, you should be picking up falls for people who are working remote and not having completed certain jobs. We will need to show in more of supportive collaboration. It is supportive collaboration which is going to pave the way, because many of it comes from the organized leadership, and that is important. So if we have leaders on this call, I would urge you to kindly, look at engaging far more differently and far more deeper with your people, and you will see the turnaround from the workforce when they're all back to work. So those are the two things that I would like to leave you as a thought with.
Correct.
And if there's any
Correct.
further questions, I'm happy to take it. Otherwise, we can draw it to a close.
Right. I think Soma is asking about the way you mentioned that there are regular health checkups being organized in your organization. So, how do you suggest you? I mean, what is the suggestion that you would like to give to other organizations about the same thing? Like, how do we manage the health checkups on a regular basis?
Right. So we're not referring to health checkup as in a medical checkup. What we're talking about is taking a health check voice from a state of mind, an emotional state of mind. Okay, state of mind is a being in itself. So what we do is, in our organization, for example, we've got a moodometer, which is part of the daily routine. When an employee logs into network, we urge them to fill in anything which basically depicts their state of mind. It could either be an inspired state, it could be happy, it could be fine, it could be angry, it could be sad. But then, what we do is just understand where and how the team members are on a particular any given day. And we see, over a period of time, we do generate our own reports. And when we see somebody is consistently showing sad or anxious, the talent team reaches out to them. I spoke to you about the one-on-one connect calls that we've been having. So we've been reaching out. What we've been doing all along is engaging with them. Engagement is not just about having a coffee party or a luncheon, remote luncheon party. It's beyond that. It's about talking to them and letting them know that we are with you and we are in it together, and we will come out of this together. So that actually works wonders. It goes a long way in ensuring people work towards the same common objective, even though they are remote.
Correct, correct. Uh, I
Answer?
think we do, yeah, absolutely. I don't think we have any more questions. So, yeah, I want to thank you, Sabita. Thank you so much for joining us in today's session. It was extremely insightful, and we all could go back with some things that we didn't know before. So, it was extremely insightful in that way. Uh, Thank you all for joining in today's session. And in this continuous series of webinars, the next webinar is going to be around optimistic mindset by Dechama on 20th May. So I urge you all to come and join that session as well. Thank you so much, Sabita. Thank you so much all for joining in today's session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, team. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.